having Miss MoShay LaRen join us. And if you're not familiar with her, trust me, you will be familiar with her by the time this is over. MoShay, excuse me, is one of Philadelphia's beloved radio personalities, and not only that, but she's been an advocate when it comes to domestic violence, and that's in some ways how she and I actually met. I was serving on a panel that she was also on. It was a youth panel, actually up here in Uptown. We were basically there to give our advice to youth and you know, kind of show them the best way to communicate with their parents and just to deal with some of the things that they're going through in life. And thereafter, she began telling me about a stage production that she had coming up, which was Voices of Domestic Violence, dance, music, and monologues. And so she, you know, was really looking for some millennials to step up and really galvanize around this cause of domestic violence. And so many of my family and so many of my friends have been affected by domestic violence, and it's something that I do feel very passionately about. And so when she, you know, let me know that the opportunity was there, there was really no thought that went into it. I was very honored to be able to come on board, and that led to such a just amazing experience. Excuse me, especially when it came to my personal growth and really personally healing when it came to my scars that dealt with domestic violence. And so it's an honor to be able to welcome Miss MoShay LaRen. So I ask you guys to give her a round of applause. So MoShay, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is MoShay LaRen?
Who is MoShay LaRen? You know, I'm still trying to figure that out. But no, in short, I am a mother of a beautifully spirited, wonderful, passionate, loving 21-year-old who is a bison. She attends Howard University. Shouts out to HU.
Oh, yeah, you can let the love be known.
Yes. And moreover than that, I'm a lover of God. I'm a lover of creativity, and I'm a lover of people. And I'm a lover of love, so you know, I think that my purpose here on this earth was truly discovered in me talking about my journey through domestic violence. Because
I can definitely say there was a moment with sincerity when I realized that this was my purpose, and it was like the floodgates opened, and I was like, all right, I'm out here, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah, you're ready to take on the world.
So now tell us a little bit, because of course I like to start in the beginning. So tell us about MoShay that was a little kid running around. Like, what were you like as a kid? Because
girl, I was a little bald-headed little girl. And back in the day when I was growing up as a little girl, it wasn't cool to be bald-headed. You know, now it's like being, you know, bald-headed and short hair. You know, it's sexy, it's cool. But back then, and this is really the start of my story. In kindergarten, I remember I never had long hair. And girls would come to school with ponytails, and they'd be playing outside and flinging their ponytails, and you know, getting dressed for school pictures, and they'd have all these barrettes and bows and all of this. And I had like this much hair, and so my mom knew that it was taking a toll on my self-esteem. So bless her heart, she braided it in what they call it, little pickaninnies, you know, the little pick. I had no hang time, but she still found enough hair to put a barrette on it. I remember going to school for picture day and having to take a note home to my mom, and the teacher had asked my mom if she can remove the barrettes out of my hair because it was kind of like bothering, agitating my eye and my vision to see the board. But I tell that story to say that I had very, very low self-esteem because my picture of what beauty was, it wasn't me. It wasn't what I saw when I looked in the mirror. You know, my picture of beauty was, you know, obviously having long hair and being a certain complexion and having a certain, you know, body type and living in a certain type of house and all that. And I didn't have all that. And so my depiction of beauty was distorted. And so it took it took a toll on my self-esteem, so much so that as I started to grow older and you get into those impressionable teen years and you start finding interest in boys, and I'm realizing that they're not interested in me because I look like them, you know, and all true story, I can't make this up. And so I was being rejected, and that was further you know, taking a toll on my esteem. So then I met this guy, and he was a super jock at school, star football player. Every girl in the school wanted him, and he, for some odd reason, was interested in little old me. And I'm like, you like me for real? You know, he told me how pretty I was and all of this, and that really started to give me a sense of self that I had never felt before, you know, because I never had anybody, especially not a man, because I'm a daddyless daughter growing up. I didn't have a man to affirm that with my short hair, my brown skin, and whatever else that I thought was flawed about myself was still beautiful. I never had that. So when he came and he started pouring into me in that way, I'm thinking, he loves me. He really loves me. And this is 14. I mean, I'm 14. So understand, you know, what you think is love at 14 isn't what you think is love at 24, 34. So this person happened to be my daughter's father. And so he and I started dating at 14. And it was really early on that the signs of abuse were there. But again, not knowing what they were, thinking it's care. Where are you going? Where are you going with? No, you can't go there. You know,
yeah.
And that's kind of how it started with him and I.
So one thing I did want to ask was, domestic violence, had it taken place anywhere else in your family? Like, were there other family members that, you know, you ever witnessed domestic violence happen with, or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my mother was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of my father and my sister's father. So as a kid, I grew up watching her be abused and really... And some of the instances that I saw my mom being abused are so vivid even now to this day. I remember when we heard like dishes crashing downstairs and we're upstairs trying to sleep and my mom's screaming, and my brother and I at 8 years old trying to figure out how do we help our mom. You know, we came up with this clever idea. We took Dixie cups and we spit in these Dixie cups and we built a fort. We called it a fort right at our door. So when my sister's father came upstairs, we had Dixie cups, and he and I would say, okay, when he comes upstairs, we're going to shoot off these Dixie cups with all this spit in it. And so it was like, ready, aim, fire. But at 8 years old, you're thinking you're helping, you know, but that is such a vivid memory for me. But I've seen so many instances of my mom being abused. My mother's mother was murdered by her boyfriend. So it's a generational curse for our family. But again, I'm not putting all this in perspective while I'm going through it, because for me it was, I finally found somebody who looked at me and saw the beauty that I didn't see in myself, who was concerned about me, is why he always wanted to know where I was going and who I was with. But this is all during high school. So it soon turned into, you know, him being physically abusive. When he couldn't control me with his verbiage, he started to try to control me physically. In school, you know, coming pulling me out of class and fighting me in the hallways and outside. And my girlfriend, my best girlfriend at the time, would say to me, like, this ain't cool, like, it ain't cool, this ain't cool. But I'm like, he loves me and he just cares. I just need to do something better so that I don't make him angry and he won't lash out at me like this. And so what ended up happening is that after so many instances of abuse and me not leaving, my family and my friends started to kind of like distance themselves from me. And so as they were doing that, what ended up happening is I now became abusive. Now we were fighting each other. So it was every argument was like, who's going to hit who first, because I know it's going to be a fight, so you got to get yours off first. So it just became so volatile from 14 till I was 19 years old. And
you're in love with this guy, but you're at war with him at the same time. So what was the moment where there kind of was a snap that happened? You know, whether it was on his part or on yours, what finally set it off within you to say, okay, I need to go?
So it was New Year's Eve, and I was 6 months pregnant, and so there were rules when we went out. And one of the rules when we went out is that I wasn't to look at anybody. I couldn't look and gaze around a room like this. So I had two options. I could either find a blank spot on the wall to look, or just look at him. So this particular night, we're out at a friend's house for New Year's Eve gathering, and because I knew the rules, I was so like, I just knew in my own, I knew that I had done everything right. I'm like, I didn't look at anybody, didn't look at, I thought I did everything right. We get in the car, and he started to question me about looking at some guy that was there. And I'm like, I wasn't looking at anyone. And the argument escalated into us fighting in the car. And he opened the passenger side door. We were driving home from Trenton, New Jersey. And he opened the passenger side door, and he pushed me out of the car. So as I'm rolling, watching his taillights in the distance, I'm rolling and I'm thinking, I am going to lose my baby. That's all I can think about, is that I'm going to lose my child. And it was in that moment that it just snapped for me. Like, now you have not just yourself to worry about, but you have this child that you're bringing into the world, and you can't bring a child into the world in this environment. And that was it for me. That was the deciding factor to, I'm leaving this relationship. Problem with that is that what people don't realize about being in like really abusive situations is that even when you decide to leave, it's really not over yet. That is when it's actually even more dangerous when you do decide to leave than when you were there. Because at least when you're there, they have some molecule of control. But when you leave, it's kind of like, you know, so for a year and some after that, he stalked me. I mean, viciously stalked me. All right now.
Oh, right, girl. She got a sign.
So for a year and a half thereafter, I had to deal with him stalking me and breaking into my house. And, you know, he found me one day. I was in a car with a guy, and he followed us, and he blocked us in. He got out the car and pulled me out of the car by my ponytail and proceeded to beat me there in the parking lot. And this is after we had separated. I moved out, had my own place and everything. So it took about a year and a half for him to move on, and he only moved on when he found somebody else that ultimately he ended up abusing and going to jail for a year for abusing her. So that's kind of how that's how I got him to stop, you know, harassing me.
Gotcha. So what advice would you give to men in particular when it comes to your daughters, or when it comes to just loving a woman in general? You know, you can give them your own, you know, little personal piece of advice.
For men, I think men, here's the thing about just non-gender specific, hurt people. So I have just as much compassion for an abuser as I have for a victim, because an abuser has a journey and a past too. And there was an environment that shaped and molded his behavior as well. And so I don't know that I can give him any advice other than to connect to his roots, to discover who he is. And if in his roots and in his past there was violence, then for him to not wait, if he's not already an abusive if he doesn't already have that abusive person, not wait, but to go try to nurture and get some help for that now. Because we only respond to, you know, there's a thing called, I don't want to get too deep and too esoteric on y'all right quick, but
drop a few lines.
Samskaras are treads in your brain that are created through your experiences and your journey, and you know, in the things you've gone through. And the only way you change the treads, and it causes you to react the way you're used to reacting based off of the situation. And the only way you can change those is when you recognize that, you know, you've got to change the trajectory of how things are going by responding differently. And so all that to say is that I just know that I had to do my own work to figure out not the part that I played in being a victim of domestic violence, but the part that I need to play now in healing through that. And that's the same thing that has to go on with male, females alike.
And I mean, that's one thing that you did bring up, and I wanted to touch on, was that so often when we talk about domestic violence, it's always a man beating a woman. you know, it's he, or you're, you know, when you're referencing the abuser. But I can honestly say, I've seen plenty of times where a woman is laying her hands on men. And so, you know, in your opinion, or from your perspective, in what ways should we be careful about how we're discussing domestic violence, and who we're having in mind when we're speaking about this and raising awareness and you know, being advocates essentially?
So, ask the question. What was the question? I'm sorry.
So when it comes to the discussion of domestic violence, I'll say like this. How would you encourage people to be a little more aware of how they're even going about discussing the issue? Because so many times we try to be gender specific when it comes to the abuser.
To be balanced, to have a balanced conversation. Oh, okay, I get what you're saying. Right. Well, I think that you got to understand that on the left side of the equation, right? On the left side of the equation of domestic violence, there's two people involved at the bare minimum, and this is not. And then we're not even including the eyes that are watching, called the children, right? There are people involved, so everybody who's involved in it, we need to have some compassion for. So we need to, I think that all too often in domestic violence, we coddle the victims and we, you know, shun the abusers. But where is the help? How do we continue to, you know, want to uplift and encourage and empower these victims? Meanwhile, we're leaving the guys on the wayside. Like, they need help, and we need programs, we need resources to help them as much as we put as much time, effort, and energy, resources that we put on the victim side. We need to put as much or even more, because 90% of domestic violence victims are women. Then that means that we need to put more resources in trying to prevent men from being abusers. And that goes to, and that speaks to the level of preventative services that are available too. Everybody wants to, you know, everybody wants to come up with a solution of how we fix it. Can we come up with a solution of how we prevent it? You know, there's not enough time spent. And how do we take these young boys at 13 and 14, teach them anger management, teach them, you know, interpersonal, how to deal with conflict resolution. We don't put any time and effort into that. But then we have services and hotlines that you can call once the deed's been done. But ain't that too late?
To our Raw segment. And so Raw is ready and willing. It's kind of just a quick fire question. I usually try to get 5 and we may only get 3 in really quick, but just ask a question and get your opinion on, you know, what you think. So you have extensive background in radio. And so I wanted to see, given your experience, what are your thoughts about the current state of radio and the direction in which it should head?
Yeah.
And it's ready and willing.
Never gonna get a job after this. The current state of radio is horrible. It sucks, quite frankly. You know, the sad part about radio, about any publicly traded company, is that you answer to Wall Street. So it's not about the community anymore. When radio first started, especially for the African American community during the Dr. King days, that's where we got our information. You know, now it's more about, you know, how much money is being shuffled around to play records and move up the charts and all that, and nobody cares about what's going through the speakers and how it's feeding our children. You know, nobody cares about that. And the unfortunate part about it is that, you know, a lot of times where radio is supposed to be the heartbeat of the community, it's not. It's really, it's the heartbeat of the community when it serves them. They'll show up on your doorstep when your son got killed to be there for the vigil if it's the #1 story on headline news. But are they showing up on the doorsteps for the story that wasn't told on the headline news to tell the story? Are they cracking the Jenna? Is radio cracking the Jenna 6 case? You got what I'm saying? Like, that's what radio, especially black radio, we should be the ones that are telling the stories that aren't being told on headline news, not chasing the story to make the community feel like we are the people's station. Oh, they were here, they came by the house. No, go find the story go find the injustice that's not being told.
We just wanted you to feel comfortable and make sure you knew we support and we actually listen. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You need to get me hand claps and stuff, and you know I love hand claps. Thank you.
I got red because.
Stop it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. It's that time that we get up close live with Rafiya. So please feel free to get your phones out, get your hashtags ready, all of that good stuff. We got our band up here. Y'all about to go in? Y'all ready? We are in her band. Is there anything that you kind of want to leave everyone with as far as just who Rafiya is when it comes to your music, where they can find you at, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, at Rafiya Music. My website is rafiyaonline.com, and the message that I want to leave to you is to never give up on your dreams, to reach for the stars, and just to keep on going. Things might get tough sometimes, but you can do what you put your mind to, and I'm really good with that. And that's the message of hustle as well.
Well, give her a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.